All right. Hey, everybody. We are here with two people from the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. Adam Green, the Executive Director and co-founder. And Hannah Riddle is also with us. And one of the things that we want to ask about is why is Netroots so important?
Netroots is a rare opportunity to actually see people and have deep conversations. People that you have heard of, seen on chat lists,
Yep.
admire, and just get to actually go deep with a little bit because you're in the same place at the same time. It's
Right.
something that should happen more, but I always leave here with new ideas and new relationships with people that lead to great collaborations. That's why I come.
Yeah.
I would just echo that and add that I think it has become even more important post-COVID because I feel like a lot of us are in very virtual
Right.
spaces, and I get a lot of the energy around organizing from being in the same room as people, and I think that it's critical for training, it's critical for maintaining morale,
Right.
and it has become even more critical now that everyone is behind a computer screen, puts more human.
100%. And we were talking a little bit offline just a few minutes ago about some of the work you guys did last year on the ground with Dan Osborn, who was an independent candidate for Senate and did remarkably well. But what were some of those messages that he was delivering that we should all be taking into account for 2026 and beyond?
Well, one thing that I actually just noted on a panel with Attorney General Ellison was that we did a lot of work in 2024 with Biden and then Harris to get words in their teleprompter. Good economic populist, popular messaging. And then when it came time for the debate, when she had no notes, she had a beautiful set of answers on abortion, some fine stuff on democracy, and threw not one punch on economics, which was the number one thing for voters.
Yeah.
And that was disheartening. And then we went on the ground with Dan Osborne. And we had, by an accident of scheduling, we sat down with him, Hannah and I, our first hour in town, and he just dripped and oozed authenticity as a union guy, as a mechanic, singing the song, fighting the plight of working people against corporate CEOs. And any question that was asked of him by a reporter, by a voter, whether it was economics or immigration or climate, he would bring it all back to workers versus CEOs, not because he was media trained, but because that's who he is. And that's, I think, a template for what Democrats should strive for in our candidates going forward. And Hannah interviews all of our candidates, state, local,
Yep.
federal.
Yeah, and I think for those of you who don't know, Dan came within 6 or 7 points, I believe, of upsetting the Republican, I'm forgetting her name at the moment.
Deb Fischer.
Deb
in
Fischer.
a 20-point red state.
And a 20-point red state that, Kamala lost by quite a bit. So some of those things he was saying, like, what were those reactions with voters who were not actually used to anybody other than a Republican in their area? Like, what were the things he was saying that was resonating with them so much?
Yeah, I mean, we had the opportunity to be at several of his town halls and events, not just in Omaha and Lincoln, which are kind of like the blue dot in the
Right.
bluer areas of the state, but also like in rural Nebraska. We got to be in a room with him in a teeny tiny little coffee shop where dozens of people turned out to hear from him and were asking him questions off the cuff, and like Adam said, he was not media trained, but he just kept telling stories about hog farmers, about how corporations were stealing from farmers and from renters and tenants, and the stories are so specific that they're so widely applicable.
Right.
And the more specific and personal you can get, the more people find a detail in that story that they can relate to themselves and take that and change their mind about a very specific thing. That's how you move the needle.
Right, exactly. And I think if there is a silver lining to last year's election results, it's that I think I have seen more and more people in the party moving more left, right, and talking about workers, and especially with this horrible bill that was just passed by Congress and signed by the president. What are some of these lessons that you have seen over the last couple of years that Democrats should be taking into account when they're picking candidates in their districts across the country?
Well, it's funny. I generally don't use the word left because I feel like it's self-marginalizing. If you picture a bird, the left wing is about 20% of the bird.
Yeah.
Whereas progressive ideas, economic populist ideas are often 80%, 85%, 90% popular, right? Expanding Social Security benefits. Is that left? 80% of the people support it. That's
Right.
where the center of the country is, right? So just a little thing.
I
for
got you.
right?
I got you. Yeah.
But I've been thinking more about inside-outside. Who channels the visceral rage that people have right now at a very broken political system, broken economic system, both rigged for billionaires, right?
Right.
And Dan Osborne did that. When you put on those lenses and you look at politicians, you ask tough questions, right? I love Ro Khanna. I love his economic policies. I love so many things about him. And he's a plausible candidate for president. I do ask myself, would the mechanic who's rooting for Dan Osborne look at Ro Khanna and say, that's my guy? Pete, very good spokesperson. Does he scream outsider to the system or inside the system, right? And the more I think about it, there's really a tension for Democrats right now in that so many of the obvious people to run for office, whether it's president or any other office, inherently, just by virtue of candidate recruitment or just like norms, come from the inside.
Yeah.
And Trump went around the entire Republican establishment to claim the outsider mantle.
Right.
And Hillary was the insider. Kamala, in the end, was the insider. We see this across the world. Those who are crusty insiders lose. So I've been wondering just, do we need the UAW president to run for something big, right? Do we need to find populist people who are good leaders, right? They have a reputation,
right,
but just don't feel like a creature of the system. So that's like a thought in progress right now.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, and I think you are saying it much more articulate than I was when I'm talking about the left or the right, but it also feels like that there is a realignment sort of happening right now, right, between people who support corporations and billionaires and people who support working people. And I think that's been one of the exciting things to see, that I think more and more people seem open to those ideas. And some of our guys on our podcast were Republicans who have now moved left, and it's been great to see that transfer and knowing that we can do it. But for some of us who are trying to work on moving people from, let's say, Republicans to the Democratic side, what are some of those messages that you're really seeing that is like lighting up the eyes, like when Dan Osborn was talking?
I mean, I think, not to keep hammering Dan Osborn, but I think he had a unique advantage in that he was running as an independent, and that gave him a degree of separation from the Democratic Party and the ability to say that he was fighting for working people, and people believed him. A lot of polling we did last year indicated that people do not see the Democratic Party as the party for working people anymore, or the party of the economy really at all. And so that degree of separation that he was able to create with a label was really helpful for him, but how do we make that into the new Democratic Party? How do we connect that? But the thing that we continue to drive home is that it's not really right versus left, it's up versus down, and in versus out. And so the people who are working, the bottom 99% of people, we are so much closer to each other than we are to the people at the top. And connecting those dots and making sure that Republican working class people know that they are one medical bill away from the person that they are looking down on the street, or like one crazy accident away from exactly.
Can I have one thing?
Absolutely.
Which is, as we're trying to have that appeal, I think one of the defining questions in our politics right now is, do we name villains, and are we willing to name a story that positions us as a hero against probably a billionaire or corporate villain?
Right.
And what we're up against is Donald Trump being like, I'm the hero, and look at the immigrants over there, right? And if we have no counter story, we lose. Right? There are a number of people in our politics right now who are like, beware of these words. I am fighting for everybody. You can't fight for everybody. There are bad actors and good actors, bad guys and good guys. And if you're repressing your workers, if you're gypping people, if you're hurting people at the grocery store, if you're ripping them off, price gouging them, then you're a bad actor. We cannot fight for them. So that is, I think, one of the problems with our politics is those who want to pick no fights, want to take the corporate money, not offend the corporations, and then say, I'm for working people. That doesn't work, right? So I think that's something that we have to do if we actually want to, appeal to people on these working class issues. We have to be willing to say there are bad actors. It's not who Donald Trump is pointing to. Right. It's the people up there.
100%. And I think people want fighters right now, and like people who are going to fight for working people and all of that. So, and the final thing I'm going to ask you guys is, like, how can people support your work? What is the best way for people to learn more about your organization and support you guys moving forward?
Besides going to boldprogressives.org?
Yeah, well, that was your tee up for that.
I mean, we are the group that invented the $3 ask. Back when everybody else was asking for $20, we're like, can we have $3? And it was really heartwarming when we would get handwritten notes from senior citizens being like, I don't have much money. You asked for $3. This is what I can afford, and I believe what you're doing. And that is really what sustains our work. So I think going to boldprogressives.org is one way of doing it.
Boldprogressives.org. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate all the work that you do, and I feel like there is a shift in your direction, especially since this bill was passed, that is so terrible for working people and is just a giveaway for billionaires. So I thank you for doing your work, and please, everybody, go to boldprogressives.org and support them today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.